right. So it seems like I'm recording now. Okay, yeah, I'm recording. Now, thank you, Dominic, for coming once again. Today we're gonna uh, again talk about some of your preferences for learning a language, any language. Now, for this occasion, we're gonna have a discussion on a very particular topic. However, it's kind of difficult to get into right away. So for this, I'd like you to start talking. Let's do a quick warm up. And so I have just one question for you. Do you have a preferred method for learning a language and what is it like?
Mhm. Yes, indeed, I have. My preferred method of learning a language is through movies and television. And that's something I did with English, that's something I did with Spanish, and that's also something I started with French. But since I don't have friends that speak French, I didn't keep on doing it. So yeah, and I think chatting with friends is also like a method for me to learn a language. Is more about the motivation, because if you have friends that speak the language, you're really motivated to keep on learning and studying outside of a textbook, of course.
It sounds like your method is based on a very realistic outputs, like movies, real natives. Real natives is not a real word, but native people.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, definitely.
but it sounds like that. So today's topic is called learning language learning environments. So a language learning environment is anything that contributes to your learning. It's everything that's physical, such as a classroom, your bedroom, the feelings that you have, the psychological aspects of it, and as well the interaction that you create between you, your teacher, if you have a teacher. Some language learning environments don't have teachers, uh, and the resources that you utilize. So according to Rodriguez Vite, which is someone that really specializes in this topic of language learning environments, he says that there are three types of language learning environments. Scholar, which is the normal classroom, the typical classroom, real, and virtual. Of these three, which one do you prefer?
Mm, it's really difficult to say. I mean, if I lived in a country where the language is spoken, then I would prefer that. So, like in a real environment with people, with friends, informal situations, that I would prefer that if I were in a country where the language is spoken.
Mhm.
But if I learned the language outside of the country where it is spoken, then it's difficult to say virtual versus scholar, because in the pandemic is that a word? In the global, of Corona, we saw that although everybody was virtually connected through internet, the statistics of mental health said that it for everybody, mental health got more of an issue, although everybody was connected through the internet and through virtual classrooms, but everybody felt worse. So I think to learn a language in a scholar environment where you're not on your own or virtually interacting with people on the internet and still feeling kind of alone and on your own. So I think a scholar situation is also good. So I think it's not either or, it's more like for this kind of person, that would be preferable, and sometimes that would be preferable.
Mhm.
But I think for me, it's a mix. So, like informal
Mix.
situations with friends chatting and like, I don't know, parties or something, and instructions from a teacher could help. Also, moreover, on the start, when you start to learn a language, a teacher is more important than later on, I think. Yeah, so a mixture.
A mix of the three. All right. Now, what is okay? Before moving on, Rodriguez Vite also says that there are four elements to language learning environments: interaction, information, production, and exhibition. Let's start with interaction. So, what is your most preferred space for interaction? Maybe you prefer having interaction with a teacher, with a native, with a book.
Um, To start with, I can say that a textbook is the least favorite interaction I have. So that's something I was always very critical because I always take the word trident as an example. In Spanish, it's tridente, and that is a word that's for me like the word that really made me realize how less important are textbooks.
Mm,
Because in textbooks, you will learn words that, take place in the business world and take place in school environments and formal situations, but you won't learn dialects or colloquial words or like trident. You wouldn't even learn the word if you were in the country
mhm,
where where the language is spoken, unless you take part in a carnival or something like that. But that's like a very specific word. But although every native, or at least in German-speaking countries, that's a word that everybody knows if the person had a childhood in speaking the language. But in a second language or third language, or you wouldn't learn the word. So I'm sorry. What was the initial question?
but you're going somewhere because you tell me that you don't like, well, the least preferred interaction for learning a language will be a book.
Yes,
Now,
exactly.
what would be the first one? Maybe having a teacher. Do you really like having a teacher for learning a language on
No,
your own?
not really. In
No.
the beginning, I liked it because it was kind of a structure, and they gave me a structure, and I learned within the structure how to acquire the language. So that
Mm,
was something that in the initial phases of learning Spanish and English helped me a lot. And But later on, I came to, I don't know, detest teachers a bit because their methods are not very creative, or at least the teachers that I have. So we always
mm,
had to study vocabulary and then write sentences with it, but really not something creative like in my native tongue classes. We could write essays and really things that made us think about. But in a second language, at least in my country, we always just memorized words and then did grammatical exercises, and that's something that's really not very entertaining, I would say.
mm.
So that's why I hate textbooks. Really, that's the reason.
That's interesting. All right. Now, where do you like to get information from?
The Is there like a multiple choice, or is it a free question?
It's a completely free question. Maybe you like to get information from movies, uh, from the internet.
Oh, then I would say from the internet and also from books, but like encyclopedias, not like textbooks, but
Mm,
more like encyclopedias, like dictionaries. That's also a source I use for information. So internet and encyclopedias. But
all
also,
right.
like friends, you can also always ask native speakers if,
Mhm.
do you say this or that? Is that correct? Or is that a word you use?
So a mix between natives and books, right?
Mhm. And
All
the
right.
internet.
And the internet, yes, of course. Um, where do you like to get to make most of your production? Maybe you like to write essays, you like to record yourself. How do you product language and where do you produce it?
My preferred production would be writing. And that's also, on a side note, that's something that I was always very aware of, because since I'm an introvert, I don't really like to interact with people on a, you know, all the time. I need time to calm down and to refill my energy. And that's also the reason in second language learning and third language learning why I prefer to write, because talking to people that I don't know really stresses me out. So it makes me nervous, and it makes me, like, with you, it's okay because I know you and we're friends. And but with people I don't know, it really stresses me out, and it makes me think, oh, did I say this right? Did I make an error there? So I prefer to write instead of talking to people. And also, that's also a reason because why I why my writing is so much better than my speaking, because writing is kind of an art itself. You don't write like you speak. It's
Mhm.
very different.
That's true.
And with writing, although you like also in chatting, you have one of a second more than you have when you think. So you have to think faster when you speak than when you write. So writing is mm, yeah, writing is my preferred method of production. But I'm aware also that I need to practice, my oral production in order to perfect the language competences overall.
All right. That's good. Now, finally, from the four elements of language learning environments, how do you like to exhibit your learning? How do you like to say to the world, look, I've learned this very specific pattern in this language?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I mean sometimes I tell my friends like, oh look, this word is so cool that I just learned, and recently it happened to me in Spanish. And so sometimes I tell my friends, oh, do you know this and that word? And I find it so interesting because just recently got to, see the word and learn it. So that's a method I have. I just talk about it with my friends. Do you know this? I just learned that. You know, and but yeah, I mean, I think that's the only method I have to exchange my learning process.
All right, with friends. That's very good. Now I have a list of language learning environment strategies. I'm going to mention a few of them and you tell me, yes, I'd like to do that. I hate to do that, or I've never done that. I'm willing to try that. Collaborative learning, working with others. Do you like that?
Mm, in the middle. I don't like it, but I also don't do not like it, you know? It's
Don't
in the
hate it.
middle.
All right. Now, how about simulations?
Mm, yes, yes, I like that.
Okay. Um, mind maps or graphic constructions.
Oh, definitely. That's very helpful.
Okay. Um, practice in a laboratory.
And a what? What
In
is
a
that?
laboratory, a
Ah,
lab,
and ah, hmm. Yes.
language lab.
Well, I never did it, but I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, they're usually full of computers, and you're talking with someone, but it's a machine. Like it is programmed for you to interact with it.
Oh, if it's that, then I hate it because a
You hate
friend
it.
of mine just recently did an exam in German with a computer and she had to talk to it and it's very artificial. So the computer really just talks pre-programmed. All the answers were pre-programmed and you know, it's not
Mhm.
very funny then. I thought it was like doing experiments or something.
That's right. How about conferences?
Like debates?
Like someone really important, maybe a teacher of you, doing a lecture on one topic
Um, Without interaction or just in front of the class? Just in
without any interaction, just
oh,
the person talking.
well, actually, it also depends because on YouTube, many lecturers, many professors, I watch videos of them, and they talk so enthusiastically and so full of energy that you just
Mm.
cannot stop listening to them. So I wouldn't say that teaching in front of a class necessarily is a bad thing if you really can, you know, cultivate if you can really grab the attention of everybody, then why not? Then it could be fun. But if it's just like reading all the stuff that's written on a paper and monotonally, then not.
All right. How about using the internet, like writing an email, participating in a forum? Do you
Oh,
like that?
definitely,
You like
definitely.
that a lot?
Yes, it's so much fun. You can talk about any topic on the internet and you're anonymous, so you don't have to be afraid that oh you made an error there or oh what people think. Then it's not so important.
How about playing a video game
Oh,
or a
that's
or a
also
game in real?
in real like a board game.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's also fun.
it sounds like you prefer video games, right?
Oh, I prefer both. Um,
Both?
well, I think that's not a very grammatical structure, but if I were to choose between the two, I would prefer video games. But I like both.
All right. Now let's move on to the psychological aspect of language learning. Um, what is your most preferred psychological environment to learn a language? Maybe you like to be relaxed, you like to feel pressure from others, you like to surround yourself in certain feelings.
Um, I would say my preferred emotion would be like yeah, relaxed and happy. I really don't know how to differentiate it because on the one hand, language learning would make me happy. So if I'm sad and I start learning a language or studying or learning new words, then it kind of makes me happy. So then my initial state would be actually sadness, but it would start to make me happy. But
Mm,
what I can say is that I wouldn't want to learn a language with pressure. So if somebody's pressuring me, then my automatic reaction would be I don't want to do it. So
mhm.
if somebody says to me, I have to, maybe it's because I'm older. When I was still a teenager, I took the pressure kind of more elegantly. So if teachers were to say to me, "You have to do this," yeah, then I did it. But now it's like, okay, I really question the things, and when it's if it's my life, then I choose what to do. But when you're a child, you really don't know much still. So,
All right. Now, about the academical environment. Which academical environment you prefer to learn a language? Maybe one that's on your own, in university, in an app. Maybe you create an app yourself.
oh, definitely an app. I think apps are the coolest. It's just great. My preferred app is Memrise.
Memorize.
So, yeah.
And why do you like that so much compared to a classroom?
Um, I mean, again, it depends on the learning level. So of course, if you just start with a language, maybe an app where it teaches yourself, um, is maybe a bit overwhelming because you still don't know the structures, and maybe you don't have much experience in in learning a language at all. So, but it improves the more you learn languages. So with the third language, you already have skills to apply on an app, and so you're less likely to need a teacher all the time. But yeah, so in comparison to a classroom, apps are really I don't know why teachers don't use apps or use apps so little because um, in the school environment, individuality is a topic since, I don't know, 50 years ago. So we all want individualization, and we want to custom the learning process very individually on the learner and to improve anybody and make anybody improve themselves. And apps are really the clue to that because apps can really monitor your learning process. The app knows when you learn a word, so which time, which minute, how much, how many revisions you needed to learn the word. So you can have a statistic, a complete statistic on your learning process, and the app can individualize your learning process. That's something a teacher cannot do because a teacher cannot observe you all of the time, like behind your shoulder and know, on, 1 o'clock you learned this word. So maybe it's better for you to learn at, midday or something. That's something a teacher cannot generally do if the teacher is not willing to have a burnout, I think. But an
It's
app can do it.
it sounds like, and I wrote it down. Like you really like the aspect from apps that it's giving you constant feedback. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Memrise, for example, has an algorithm that makes you repeat a word. The first time you learn the word, it makes you repeat it 4 hours from the time you learned it. And if you got it correct, the time 4 hours after you learn it, then it's 8 hours, then it's 24 hours, then it's 48 hours, then it's 6 days, then it's 12 days, then it's 24 days, 48 days. 90 days and 180 days. And if you still got it correctly after 180 days, then, it won't ask you anymore.
Mm. All right.
Of course, you can ignore the word before if you already know the word perfectly, so you won't have to, revise it all the time. So,
And how about in terms of physical environment? Some people like to learn a language in a place where uh, they haven't done any previous work before. For example, you have your office in home, and there you do your work. You have your bed where you sleep, and maybe you have an extra room where people don't do any work and they start learning a language in that room just because it's different and it works for them. So I would like to ask you, what kind of considerations do you take in terms of immersing yourself in learning a language? Maybe some people also like to change the language of the phone, or they
ah,
they change the background of the computer. They put the flag of whatever country. What considerations do you take to immerse yourself in a language?
oh, well, I think the physical aspect is very important because I remember when I started learning Spanish, I changed everything to Spanish. My phone, my computer, all my accounts like Facebook and Instagram, and also video games. I love to play video games in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
with the Spanish interface. And in my apartment, at first I thought, well, maybe I should put like a paper on every object with the Spanish translation. But then I thought, oh, no, that would be really messy. So you would have papers all over the place. But back then, I like to go through the rooms and, say, ah, esta es una mesa, esta es una ventana, and things like that. And put a name on every object when you go through a room. That's really helpful to know, the name of that object, or no,
Mm-hmm.
you have to look it up again. And but I don't have a specific room where people learn languages. I'm not sure if anybody has specifically for languages, but yeah. So going through a room, that's something I used to do, and naming all the things and changing all my interfaces to that language. That's also something I did.
And finally, this is the last question. In regards to innovation, have you noticed that you do certain things that nobody else does for learning a language?
Um, um, I'm not sure. I mean, I used to write a diary, like a language diary, where I would put all the words when watching a movie or a series, and I heard a word or a phrase that I didn't know or thought it would be useful to say later on. I would put it into my language diary, and also I would write regularly entries in that diary talking about my day and my feelings and about my language learning process, in fact. But I think that's something that many people would do. That's not something that just I do, but something I'm quite sure that not many people do is learning a language through a dictionary.
Mm,
I'm sure that rarely people would do it because a dictionary is so thick. And but you know what, I think a dictionary is so great for learning a language, because when you're learning a language through a textbook, let's say a textbook A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, the vocabulary in there is always limited. It's always limited. Like, even though you learning C2, like in a C2 book, the vocabulary in there would never be like all the C2 vocabulary there is.
Mm.
So what I would do is, what I do in fact now is to learn vocabulary systematically in the dictionary. And my method is I start with the letters that have the least pages. So, for example, in Spanish, it would be the Y, like the Y letter. It only has like 3 pages. The Enya letter, for example, has 1 page. So if you learn the page of the letter Enya, you already know all the words there are. If you just, read the page with Enya. And so it goes on. I think the letter with the most pages is the letter C. So that would be the letter that you would learn in the end. So because you don't want to overwhelm yourself. And that's something I think not many people do because it's very exhausting if you really do it regularly. So, but it's
Yeah, that's
also
true.
very fun.
The lexical aspect of language, it sounds like you also put a lot of emphasis on it. And I know that um, the the lexical family of words, you also like to make connections between words that don't are not apparently connected, but
Yes,
I
yes,
believe that's the
definitely.
case with you.
Yes, definitely. Because I remember sometimes it happened to me that I learned a word. And then I thought, oh my God, it's so obvious. That's the same family. But I never thought in terms of, like, for example, many words in German are very similar to Spanish. I know I always take Spanish, for example, because I'm not really learning English. But
Yeah.
many words are very similar, like in terms of prefixes, suffixes, and also like schemes in thinking terms, like
Mm.
when in German you have a compound word and it means a thing, then in Spanish you would have like the same suffixes and the same root word, and it also means metaphorically the same thing. But I think with the mental lexicon, it's like you that's another topic, I think, for another video. But yeah, I mean, um, it happened to me that I learned words and I thought to myself, "Oh, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that before?" But I think you assimilate the words when you see them. So you wouldn't think like, oh, the prefix is that and the root is that, and then you translate it and think that must be that in Spanish too. I think that this happens very rarely. So
Okay. Now I have the information for your most preferred language learning environment. That's very good. Uh, well, I'm gonna stop recording. I appreciate your attendance. Also,
thank you for
thank
having
you
me.
for watching. Okay.